Like and subscribe now. This incredible true story from World War II will move you to tears. What happened in the English cafe changed heart forever. This is a story about humanity and kindness. Don't miss it. A story about kindness across borders and the power of standing together. 1942, World War II. England. American soldiers were stationed there, preparing to fight the Nazis. But one black American soldier faced a different kind of enemy, discrimination in a country that wasn't even his own. He walked into an English cafe, hoping for a simple meal. He was tired. He was far from home. He was fighting for freedom. What happened next was something nobody expected. Something that proved that kindness can exist in the darkest times. Something that showed the power of people standing up for what's right. This is a story about an act of human decency that changed one man's life. And it changed a nation's understanding of justice. When distance made discrimination clear. The year was 1942. World War II was raging. England was under threat from German bombing. American soldiers had been sent to help defend the country and prepare for the eventual invasion of Nazi-occupied Europe. Private James Turner *** was a black American soldier from Alabama. He was 23 years old. He had joined the army to serve his country. He believed in the cause of fighting fascism and defending freedom. But James had grown up in the segregated South. He knew what discrimination felt like. He knew what it meant to be treated as less than human based on the color of his skin. When he arrived in England with the army, he hoped that things might be different. He hoped that in a foreign country, fighting a common enemy, people might see him as just another soldier. Just another American doing his part. He was wrong. American officers in England had brought segregation with them. They enforced the same whites-only rules in England that existed in the American South. They told black soldiers where they could go, where they could eat, where they were allowed. It was strange and painful. America was fighting against fascism, against a system of racial purity and hierarchy. Yet American officers were enforcing racism in the very country they were supposed to be helping defend. One evening, James decided to do something small. He decided to go get a cup of tea and a sandwich at a local cafe. It was an English cafe, not an American establishment. Maybe, he thought, things would be different. Margaret Williams ** was a waitress at the cafe. She was English, probably in her 60s, with warm eyes and the kind of practical kindness that British people were known for. She had worked in the cafe for decades. She had seen soldiers come and go. She had seen the American soldiers arrive in her town. On the day James walked in, the cafe was relatively quiet. There were a few English customers. There were a couple of American white soldiers sitting in the corner. Margaret was behind the counter when James walked in. When kindness broke through prejudice, James approached the counter. He tried to smile, even though he was nervous. He didn't know what would happen. "Can I get a cup of tea and a sandwich, please?" James asked politely. Margaret looked at him. She looked at his American Army uniform. She looked at his face. And then something happened that James would never forget. Margaret smiled. Not a polite smile. Not a professional smile. But a genuine, warm smile. The kind of smile you give to someone you're genuinely glad to see. "Of course, dear," Margaret said. "What kind of sandwich would you like? We have ham, cheese, and beef today." James felt relief wash over him. "I'll have the ham, please. Thank you." But then the American white soldiers in the corner stood up. One of them approached the counter, his face red with anger. "You can't serve him," the American soldier said to Margaret. "He's colored. You can't let him sit down in here with us." Margaret looked at the American soldier, and then she looked at James, and something shifted in her expression. "Listen here," Margaret said, her British accent sharp and clear. "This is England. This is my cafe. And you don't tell me who I can serve. This young man is a soldier, same as you. He's fighting the same war as you. And I will serve him, and he will sit wherever he likes." The other American soldier came over, backing up his friend. "We appreciate it, but there are rules." "Rules?" Margaret interrupted. "I'll tell you what rules are. Rules are what the Nazis have. Rules that say some people are better than others because of how they look. Rules that say some people aren't human. Is that the kind of rules you want to follow? Is that why you're here, fighting?" The American soldiers were quiet. They looked at each other, unsure what to do. Margaret turned her back to them and looked at James. "Sit down wherever you like. I'll bring your tea and sandwich you right away." James sat down at a table by the window. He was shaking slightly, overwhelmed by what had just happened. The two American soldiers left the cafe. They muttered as they walked out, but they left. The English customers watched. Some of them smiled at James. They understood what had just happened. They understood that Margaret had stood up against injustice. Margaret brought James's tea and sandwich. She set it down gently. "Don't you mind them," Margaret said. "You're welcome here. You're welcome as long as you need to be. You're doing something important, you and all the soldiers. The least we can do is treat you with respect." James couldn't speak for a moment. He was too emotional. He nodded his thanks. As Margaret turned to go, she put her hand on his shoulder. "You're fighting for freedom, aren't you? Then you deserve to be treated with dignity. That's what freedom means." James ate his sandwich and drank his tea, and he felt, for the first time in a long time, like he was treated as an equal, like his humanity was recognized, like his sacrifice was valued. When one act inspired many, James returned to that cafe many times over the next months. Margaret always welcomed him. She began saving the best sandwiches for him. She asked about his family back home. She treated him like a friend, not just a customer. Other black soldiers heard about the cafe. They began going there too. Margaret welcomed them all. She refused to follow the segregation rules that American officers had tried to enforce. The English community took notice. They saw that Margaret was serving all soldiers with respect and dignity. And gradually, other English shopkeepers and cafe owners began doing the same. The message was clear. In England, everyone would be treated with respect, regardless of the color of their skin. It became a small rebellion against the racism that American officers tried to enforce. It wasn't organized. It wasn't political. It was simply English people saying, "This is our country. In our country, all people are treated with dignity." When James finally left England to go fight in Europe, he said goodbye to Margaret. She hugged him. She told him to be careful. She told him that she prayed for him and all the soldiers. "You showed me something important," James told Margaret. "You showed me that kindness can exist, that people can stand up against prejudice, that humanity can win." Margaret smiled. "You're a human being. You deserve to be treated like one. That's not kindness. That's just what's right." James survived the war. He came home to America, but he never forgot Margaret. He never forgot that act of kindness in an English cafe that meant more to him than she could have known. Years later, when the civil rights movement was happening in America, James thought about Margaret. He thought about how one person had been brave enough to stand up. He thought about how that bravery had inspired him. After the war, James became an advocate for civil rights. He spoke about what he had experienced. He talked about the paradox of fighting for freedom abroad while being oppressed at home. He talked about Margaret and what her kindness had meant. Margaret's story spread. It became a symbol of what happens when people choose humanity over prejudice. It became a reminder that kindness and standing up for what's right matter. The power of one person choosing kindness. This story teaches us something fundamental. **** one person standing up can change everything. Margaret was just a waitress in an English cafe. She didn't have power or authority. She wasn't famous. She wasn't important in the grand scheme of things. But when she saw injustice, she stood up. She said no to discrimination in her small cafe. And that small act of courage rippled outward. It inspired other people. It changed how a community treated black soldiers. One person, one decision, one moment of standing up for what was right. That's all it took. This story also teaches us, ****, kindness and respect are not weakness. They are strength. ****. Margaret could have followed the rules. She could have told James to leave. She could have avoided conflict with the American soldiers. But she chose to stand up. She chose to treat James with dignity. And in doing so, she showed the real meaning of strength, not dominating others, but standing up for what's right even when it's difficult. There's also a lesson about seeing people as human beings first. ****, when we see someone as a person instead of a category, kindness becomes possible. Margaret didn't see a black soldier. She saw James, a young man far from home, serving his country, deserving of respect. She saw his humanity first. And when you see someone's humanity, it becomes impossible to treat them badly. This story also teaches us, sometimes, a small act of kindness means more than people realize. Margaret probably didn't think that refusing to discriminate was a big deal. She was just doing what she thought was right. But for James, it was life-changing. It reminded him that goodness existed. It reminded him that not everyone would treat him poorly because of his race. How many people are we passing every day who need that reminder? How many people are struggling and feeling hopeless? What if one small act of kindness could change their perspective? There's also a lesson about standing alone if necessary. You don't need everyone to agree with you to do what's right. Margaret stood alone against the American soldiers. The other cafe workers probably thought she was taking a risk, but she stood her ground anyway. She did what was right, even though she stood alone. That's what courage looks like. Not always having the whole world behind you, but doing what's right because it's right, even if you stand alone. Finally, this story teaches us, during the darkest times, kindness is what keeps us human. World War II was one of the darkest periods in human history. Evil was winning in many places. But in a small English cafe, goodness was still possible. Kindness was still possible. Humanity was still possible. That's important for us to remember. No matter how dark things seem, no matter how much injustice we see, kindness is always possible. Humanity is always possible. We always have the choice to do what's right. So here's a question for you. When you see injustice, will you stand up? When you see someone being treated badly, will you do what Margaret did? Will you risk conflict for the sake of doing what's right? Because that's what changes the world. Not grand gestures, but small acts of kindness. One person standing up. One person saying no to injustice. One person treating someone with dignity when others won't. James Turner never forgot Margaret's kindness. And decades later, he was still telling her story. He was still reminding people that one person can make a difference. That kindness matters. That standing up for what's right matters. That's Margaret's legacy. Not just to James, but to everyone who hears the story. She showed us what it looks like to choose humanity over prejudice. What it looks like to stand up when it would be easier to stay silent. And that, more than anything else, is a life well lived. Like and subscribe. This beautiful true story of one woman's kindness and courage during World War II just reminded us what it means to be human. If Margaret's act of standing up against injustice inspired you to think about your own choices and how you can show kindness and courage, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to watch more stories about real people who chose to do what's right when it would have been easier to stay silent. In the comments below, tell us, who is someone in your life who has shown you real kindness when you needed it? Have you ever stood up for someone being treated unfairly? Share your story because it could inspire thousands of people to be brave and kind. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss another story about people who chose humanity over hatred, kindness over cruelty. Subscribe now and join our community of people who believe that one person can truly change the world. ****